The gold foil lettering on the invitation mocked me as I traced my finger over the embossed names. Hallie and Stefan. The ampersand between their names felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I should have thrown it away the moment it arrived. Instead, I'd kept it on my kitchen counter for weeks, letting it taunt me every morning as I made coffee. Some masochistic part of me needed the daily reminder of what I'd lost. "You're sure about this, Lexi?" Fatima's voice crackled through my phone speaker as I applied mascara, my hand trembling slightly. "Nobody would blame you for backing out." "I'm not backing out." I steadied my wrist, determined not to smudge. "I've been planning this for months." What I didn't tell Fatima was that I wasn't actually invited as a guest. No, Hallie had asked me to coordinate her wedding. My best friend of 15 years was marrying my ex-fiancé and wanted me to make sure their special day went perfectly. And I'd said yes. The autumn air bit at my cheeks as I stepped out of my car at the Rosewood estate. October in New England painted the landscape in fiery oranges and reds that matched the slow burn of rage I'd been nursing. The venue was stunning, a historic mansion with sprawling gardens that Hallie had always dreamed of. I knew because we'd planned our fantasy weddings together since college. I clutched my event planner binder to my chest like armor and marched toward the service entrance. Staff bustled around, arranging flowers and adjusting table settings. No one questioned my presence. I belonged here, just not in the way I'd once imagined. "Lexi, thank God you're here." Nicole appeared beside me, her event coordinator badge matching mine. We'd worked together at several functions before, but she had no idea about my history with the happy couple. "The florist delivered peonies instead of garden roses, and the bride is about to have a meltdown." "Where is she?" I asked, my voice impressively steady. "Bridal suite, second floor, but fair warning, she's on edge." I nodded and headed for the stairs, each step heavier than the last. This was the moment I'd rehearsed countless times in my head, but nothing prepared me for the reality of it. The door to the bridal suite was cracked open. I could hear Hallie's voice before I saw her. "I don't care what it takes, just fix it. This is my wedding day." I knocked softly and pushed the door open. And there she was, my former best friend, wrapped in a silk robe, her dark hair half-styled, looking exactly like the bride I'd once imagined being. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, and for a split second, I caught something there. Guilt, maybe? It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Lexi, finally." She turned, arms outstretched, as if we were still the same friends who had once promised to be each other's maids of honor. "The flowers are all wrong. Can you handle it?" I forced a smile. "Already on it." "You're a lifesaver." She squeezed my arm. "I knew I could count on you." The casual confidence in her voice made my stomach turn. Of course she could count on me. That's what made her betrayal so perfect. She knew I'd never let her down, even after she'd shattered my world. "How's Stefan?" I asked, unable to help myself. Her expression softened. Nervous. You know how he gets. I did know. I knew how he hummed when he was anxious, how he always loosened his tie when he felt trapped, how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled genuinely. I knew because for 3 years I'd thought he was going to be my husband, until he disappeared 6 months before our wedding. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. And then 4 months later, the announcement: Hallie and Stefan were engaged. "I should check on the flowers," I said, backing toward the door. "Wait." Hallie called me back. "I wanted to thank you again for doing this. I know it's complicated." Complicated. As if that word could possibly contain the magnitude of her betrayal. "It's fine," I lied. "What are friends for?" I escaped before she could respond and leaned against the hallway wall, drawing in a shaky breath. I could do this. I had to do this. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. "Did you really think you'd be on the guest list? Some best friend you must have been." I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. Who would send this? I scrolled through the wedding party list in my mind, trying to identify who might know about my history with the couple. Before I could process it, another text came through. "Check the groom's jacket pocket, left side. You'll find something interesting. I glanced down the hallway toward the groom's suite. Stefan was in there, probably adjusting his cufflinks in that meticulous way he had. The man who'd vanished from my life without explanation. The man who'd moved on to my best friend without remorse. The man who still had no idea what I'd discovered about him and Hallie. My phone buzzed again. Don't you want to know why he really left you? My hands trembled as I tucked my phone away. The florist crisis could wait. I had a different emergency to attend to now, one that might finally give me the answers I'd been denied for over a year. And if what I suspected was true, this wedding was about to become memorable for all the wrong reasons. I stood outside the groom's suite, my heart hammering against my ribs. The door was ajar, voices drifting out. Stefan wasn't alone. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to listen. You're sure she doesn't suspect anything? A male voice I didn't recognize. Lexi? Stefan's laugh was dismissive in a way I'd never heard before. She's too busy playing wedding coordinator to notice what's really going on. My fingers curled into fists, nails digging into my palms. The physical pain was almost a relief compared to the ache spreading through my chest. And Hallie's cool with her being here? The other voice asked. It was Hallie's idea, Stefan replied. Said it would be poetic justice or something. Women, right? Their laughter faded as they moved deeper into the room. I waited until I heard the bathroom door close and water running before I slipped inside. The suite was a mirror image of the bridal room. Plush furniture, champagne on ice, garment bags hanging from a rack. Stefan's tuxedo jacket was draped over a chair, carelessly tossed aside like so many promises. I glanced at the bathroom door. The shower was running now. I had minutes, maybe seconds, maybe... My hands trembled as I reached for his jacket. Left pocket, the text had said. I slid my fingers in, feeling nothing but fabric. Then my fingertips brushed against something in the inner breast pocket instead. A small velvet box. A ring box. My stomach dropped. Was this some sick joke? Another engagement ring when he was hours from marrying my best friend? I flipped it open, expecting a diamond. Instead, I found a simple gold band with an inscription inside. Forever yours, H. Not a new engagement ring. A wedding band. But the inscription, it wasn't new. The gold showed signs of wear, tiny scratches along the edges. This wasn't something he'd just purchased. The water shut off abruptly. I snapped the box closed and shoved it back in the pocket, my mind racing. I needed to get out, now. I slipped out just as the bathroom door opened, ducking behind a large floral arrangement in the hallway. My phone buzzed again. Now you know. They've been together longer than you think. I stared at the message, pieces clicking into place. The mysterious business trips. The weekends when Hallie was visiting her sister. The way they'd announced their engagement so quickly after Stefan left me. This wasn't a whirlwind romance born after our breakup. This was an affair that had been going on right under my nose. Lexi, what are you doing up here? Nicole's voice made me jump. The florist is downstairs having a meltdown about the centerpieces. I forced my features into what I hoped was a neutral expression. Just checking on the groom's party, making sure everything's on schedule. Nicole raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Well, when you're done stalking your ex, we have actual fires to put out downstairs. I'm not stalking. I stopped myself. Nicole didn't know my history with Stefan and Hallie. To her, I was just another wedding coordinator. I'll be right down. As I followed her downstairs, my mind raced with implications. That ring wasn't new. How long had they been together behind my back? Months? Years? The florist crisis was real but manageable. White peonies instead of blush garden roses. I handled it on autopilot, my thoughts elsewhere. Each smile I forced felt like it might crack my face. Each no problem I uttered was a lie. I was arranging the seating chart when I felt someone watching me. I looked up to find Stefan standing in the doorway, his groomsman laughing behind him. Lexi, he said, his voice softer than it had been upstairs. Can we talk? Alone? The groomsmen exchanged glances, clearly aware of who I was. How much did they know? How long had I been the punchline of their jokes? I'm working, I replied, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Please. 5 minutes. I set down my clipboard. Fine, 5 minutes. We stepped into a small alcove off the main hall, close enough to hear the bustle of wedding preparations, far enough that no one would overhear us. I just wanted to say thank you, he began, for doing this, for Hallie. Not for you? I couldn't help myself. His eyes, those warm brown eyes I'd once thought I'd wake up to for the rest of my life, couldn't meet mine. I know how this looks. Do you? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my fiancé and my best friend were having an affair behind my back, and now I'm coordinating their wedding. He flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Stefan? Enlighten me. Things between us weren't working. So you discuss it with me, I hissed, keeping my voice low. You don't disappear and then pop up engaged to my best friend. His jaw tightened. I handled it badly. I know that. How long? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since I saw that worn gold band. What? How long were you two together before you left me? Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Lexi, today isn't the day. How long? Each word was a bullet. 8 months, he finally admitted. 8 months, while I was picking out wedding venues, while Hallie was helping me choose my dress, while we were all having dinner together, laughing, planning our futures. I have to get back to work, I said, my voice hollow. Your bride is waiting. As I turned to leave, he caught my wrist. Lexi, wait. There's something you should know about Hallie. Save it. I pulled my arm away. I'm just the wedding coordinator, remember? Your relationship drama isn't my concern anymore. I walked away, my legs somehow supporting me despite feeling like they might dissolve beneath me. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again. Ready for the next revelation? Check Hallie's wedding planner, the one with the pink cover. Page 43. I didn't know who was sending these messages, but they were leading me down a rabbit hole I couldn't turn away from. And page 43 was about to show me how deep this betrayal really went. Hallie's wedding planner was in her bridal suite, the same pink leather-bound book she'd carried everywhere since getting engaged. I remembered teasing her about it months ago, back when I still thought we were friends. Back when I didn't know she'd been sleeping with my fiancé for 8 months while helping me plan my own wedding to him. I needed a reason to go back upstairs. The champagne. I grabbed a fresh bottle from the catering supply and headed up, rehearsing excuses in my head. The bridal suite was empty when I arrived. Hallie was probably getting her photos taken in the garden. Perfect. I set down the champagne and scanned the room. The planner sat on the vanity, surrounded by makeup brushes and hairspray. My hands shook as I flipped to page 43. It was a budget page, columns of numbers and notes in Hallie's looping handwriting. Nothing seemed unusual until I noticed an entry labeled insurance policy with a payment of $5,000 to someone named Truman. Truman, the wedding DJ? I checked the vendor list in my coordinator binder. Truman Hunter was indeed listed as tonight's entertainment. What kind of insurance policy costs $5,000 and involves the DJ? I snapped a photo of the page with my phone just as voices approached in the hallway. I quickly closed the planner and busied myself arranging the champagne glasses. Just need a minute to freshen up, Hallie was saying as she entered. She stopped short when she saw me. Lexi, what are you doing here? I held up the champagne bottle. Thought you might need a refill before the ceremony. Her eyes narrowed slightly, then softened into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Always so thoughtful. The bridesmaids filed in behind her, a flutter of pastel dresses and nervous energy. I recognized most of them. Women who'd once been my friends, too. They avoided looking directly at me. Everything's on schedule, I said professionally. Ceremony starts in 40 minutes. Perfect. Hallie sat at the vanity, directly in front of her planner. Oh, did you talk to Stefan? He mentioned he was looking for you. The casual way she said his name, my ex-fiancé, her soon-to-be husband, made my stomach clench. Briefly. Good. She smiled at me in the mirror. I'm so glad we can all be adults about this. The bridesmaids exchanged uncomfortable glances. They knew. Everyone knew what had happened except me, apparently. Of course, I replied, matching her tone. What are friends for? As I turned to leave, Hallie called after me. Lexi, can you make sure the DJ has the correct version of our first dance song? It's At Last by Etta James, but the remastered recording, not the original. The DJ, Truman, the insurance policy. I'll handle it personally, I promised. I found Truman setting up in the ballroom, a tall man with a closely cropped beard and headphones around his neck. He looked up as I approached. You must be Lexi, he said before I could introduce myself, the coordinator. Something in his tone made me pause. That's right, and you're Truman. In the flesh. He continued adjusting his equipment. What can I do for you? Just confirming the first dance song. At Last, the remastered version. Got it right here. He tapped his laptop. Anything else? I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. Actually, I was wondering about the insurance policy. His hands froze over the soundboard. Just for a second, but long enough to confirm my suspicion. Don't know what you're talking about. $5,000 is a lot for a wedding DJ, I said quietly, even one providing extra services. Truman straightened, looking at me properly for the first time. Look, I'm just here to play music. Whatever you think you know. I don't know anything, I interrupted. Yet, but I'd like to. He glanced around to make sure we were alone. This isn't a conversation we should have here. Then where? Meet me by the service entrance in 20 minutes. He turned back to his equipment, effectively dismissing me. I walked away, my mind racing. What had I stumbled into? Whatever insurance policy Hallie had purchased from Truman, it wasn't about music. I was checking the ceremony site when Nicole appeared beside me. Everything okay? She asked. You seem distracted. I'm fine, I lied. Bullshit. She folded her arms. I've worked with you on 3 events, Lexi. You're the most focused person I know. Today, you're all over the place. I hesitated. I barely knew Nicole, but I desperately needed someone to talk to. The bride and groom, I said finally. They were together while he was engaged to me. Nicole's eyes widened. Holy shit. And you're still working their wedding? That's either incredibly professional or completely insane. Probably both. I attempted a smile that felt more like a grimace. Why put yourself through this? She asked. I thought about the mysterious texts, the worn wedding band, the insurance policy. I need answers. Nicole studied me for a moment. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Revenge has a way of backfiring. I'm not planning anything, I said automatically. Right. She clearly didn't believe me. Well, if you need backup, let me know. I've always had a soft spot for righteous vengeance. I stared at her, surprised. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Let's just say I've been where you are. Something dark flashed in her eyes, and I wish someone had been in my corner. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another text. Don't trust Truman. He's working both sides. Check the garden shed instead, east side of the property. Go now. I looked up at Nicole, a decision crystallizing in my mind. Actually, there is something you could help me with. Name it. Cover for me for 15 minutes. I need to check something in the garden. Nicole nodded. Go, I've got this. As I slipped away toward the garden, I realized I'd just gained something unexpected in this mess. An ally. And maybe, just maybe, I was about to discover what Hallie and Stefan were really hiding. The garden shed was tucked behind a row of meticulously trimmed hedges, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Truman following me, but the path behind me was empty. The only sounds were distant laughter from the cocktail hour and the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet. The shed door was unlocked. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how crazy this was, sneaking around a wedding venue, following anonymous text messages, hunting for evidence of... What exactly? I didn't even know what I was looking for anymore, but I'd come too far to turn back now. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was musty, thick with the smell of soil and fertilizer. Light filtered through a small, dirty window, illuminating shelves of gardening tools and supplies. Nothing seemed out of place or suspicious. Until I noticed a laptop sitting on a workbench in the corner. It was open, but in sleep mode. I tapped the spacebar, and the screen flickered to life. No password prompt. Whoever had left it here hadn't expected anyone to find it. The screen showed a video editing program. Several files were organized in a project folder labeled H&S Wedding. I clicked on one titled Final Cut. The video began to play. It was footage of Stefan in what looked like a hotel room, sitting on the edge of a bed. He was talking to someone off camera, looking nervous. "I can't do this anymore," he was saying. "The lying, the sneaking around, it's killing me." A woman's voice responded, Hallie's voice. "It's just a few more weeks. Once the money clears, we can tell her everything." My heart hammered against my ribs. Tell who everything? Me? And what if she finds out before then? Stefan ran his hands through his hair, his nervous tell. What if she already knows? She doesn't, Hallie sounded confident. Lexi trusts me completely. That's why this works. I felt sick. They were talking about me, about deceiving me, but what money were they waiting for? The video continued, showing more conversations between them, always in hotel rooms, always discussing some plan. In one clip, Stefan held up papers, what looked like bank statements. 300,000, he said, sounding incredulous. All from her family trust, and she has no idea. The room seemed to tilt around me, my family trust, the money my grandparents had left me, which I'd given Stefan access to when we got engaged. The money that had mysteriously underperformed, according to the statements he'd shown me. He hadn't lost my inheritance in bad investments. He'd stolen it, with Hallie's help. The last video in the sequence showed them in bed together, champagne glasses in hand, toasting to freedom. The timestamp showed a date 3 weeks before Stefan disappeared from my life. I was so absorbed in the footage that I didn't hear the shed door open. "I see you found my insurance policy." I whirled around to find Truman standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. "You recorded them," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Why?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Same reason anyone creates an insurance policy. Protection." "Against what?" "Against people who might try to screw me over." He nodded toward the laptop. "Like those two." "I don't understand." Truman sighed, leaning against a shelf. "Stefan hired me 6 months ago to scrub some financial records. Said his fiancé's family was after him for mismanaging funds. I didn't ask questions, the money was good." "But that wasn't true," I said. "Figured that out when I saw what I was actually erasing. He wasn't protecting himself from your family. He was hiding the transfers he'd been making to offshore accounts." Truman shrugged. "So I kept copies. Started recording their meetings too. Just in case. And now Hallie's paying you to keep quiet. $5,000 a month for the past year." He smiled without humor. "Until she decided it was getting too expensive. Said after the wedding they'd be moving abroad, somewhere without extradition." The pieces clicked into place. The wedding is their cover story. They're running away together, with my money. "Bingo," Truman nodded. "And I'm supposed to accidentally delete all my evidence after getting my final payment tonight. So why tell me? Why lead me here?" His expression hardened. "Because they're planning to pin everything on me if things go south. I heard them discussing it last week. I'm their fall guy." I processed this, my mind racing. "Those texts, they were from you?" "Had to be careful. Didn't know if I could trust you." He gestured to the laptop. "Now you know everything. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, the shed door burst open again. Nicole stood there, breathless. "There you are! I've been looking everywhere!" She stopped, taking in the scene. "What's going on?" "Show her," I told Truman. He hesitated, then nodded, turning the laptop so Nicole could see. I watched her expression change as she viewed snippets of the footage. Shock, then disgust, then anger. "Those manipulative bastards," she whispered when it was over. "They stole my inheritance," I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. $300,000, and they're planning to disappear after the wedding. Nicole's eyes met mine. "What do you want to do?" It was the second time someone had asked me that question in the past 5 minutes. This time I had an answer. "I want justice. My voice was calm, determined, and I know exactly how to get it. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes, Nicole warned. Perfect. I turned to Truman. I need a copy of those videos, and I need your help with the sound system during the reception. He raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Something poetic. I felt a cold clarity settling over me. They used my trust against me. Now I'm going to use their wedding against them. As we left the shed, my phone buzzed with a message from Hallie. Where are you? Ceremony about to start. Need you now. I typed back, on my way, don't worry, everything's going exactly according to plan. Just not her plan, mine. The ceremony was picture perfect. Hallie glided down the aisle in her custom gown, beaming at Stefan like he was her salvation instead of her partner in crime. Guests dabbed at their eyes, moved by the romance of it all. If only they knew what I now did. I stood at the back, clipboard in hand, the perfect professional. Inside, I was ice and fire, calculating each step of what would come next while rage simmered beneath the surface. Nicole positioned herself near the main entrance, occasionally catching my eye with subtle nods. Truman had disappeared to prepare our technical arrangements for the reception. When Hallie and Stefan sealed their vows with a kiss, I felt nothing. The woman I'd once called my best friend and the man I'd planned to marry were now legally bound to each other, and I was about to bind them to their crimes. As guests moved to the cocktail hour, I slipped away to the bridal suite. I needed 5 minutes alone to steady myself. I hadn't expected to find Fatima waiting for me. There you are, she said, rising from the small love seat. I've been looking everywhere for you. Fatima, what are you doing here? I hadn't seen her arrive. I couldn't let you go through this alone. She crossed the room and hugged me tightly. This is insane, Lexi. You need to leave this toxic situation. I pulled back. I can't. Not yet. Why not? What could possibly be worth torturing yourself like this? I hesitated. Fatima had been telling me for months to let go, move on. Would she understand what I'd discovered? What I planned to do? They stole from me, I said finally. Not just Stefan and my trust, not just Hallie and our friendship. They literally stole my inheritance, $300,000. Fatima's eyes widened. What? How? I explained everything. The videos, the offshore accounts, their plan to disappear after the wedding. With each detail, her expression shifted from shock to outrage. Those manipulative, thieving... She stopped herself. What are you going to do? Expose them tonight, during the reception. She studied my face. And then what? What do you mean? After you expose them, after you get your revenge, what then? Her voice softened. Will it heal you, Lexi? Will it give you back the last year of your life? I hadn't thought that far ahead. My focus had been so narrow. Gather evidence, create a plan, execute. The after seemed irrelevant. I don't know, I admitted. But they can't just get away with this. No, they can't, she agreed. But there's a difference between justice and revenge. One heals, the other... She trailed off. I need to do this, I insisted. Fatima sighed. Then I'll be there, whatever happens. A knock at the door interrupted us. Nicole poked her head in. Sorry to intrude, but we have a situation. Stefan is looking for you, Lexi. Seems urgent. My stomach tightened. Did he say why? No, but he seemed nervous. He's waiting in the library. I glanced at Fatima, who squeezed my hand. Be careful. The library was a small, wood-paneled room off the main hall. Stefan stood by the window, silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. He turned when I entered. You found it, didn't you? No preamble, no pretense. I kept my expression neutral. Found what? Don't play dumb, Lexi. It doesn't suit you. He ran a hand through his hair. Truman's footage, the financial records. So he knew. Somehow, he knew. How did you figure it out? I asked, not bothering to deny it. Truman's been acting strange all day. Then I saw you two talking and you disappeared together. He stepped closer. What are you planning to do? What do you think I'm going to do, Stefan? You stole my inheritance. You and my best friend conspired behind my back for months. You're planning to flee the country tonight. He flinched at the accuracy of my accusations. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Oh, how was it supposed to happen? We were going to pay you back. Once we were settled, once the investments matured. Stop lying. My voice cut through his excuses. You never intended to pay me back. You thought I'd never find out. He was quiet for a moment. What do you want? Money? I can get you some of it back. Not all, but... I don't want your blood money, I interrupted. I want justice. By humiliating Hallie on our wedding day? How is that justice? It's a start. Stefan moved suddenly, grabbing my wrist. I can't let you do this. Let go of me. My voice was deadly calm. Not until you listen. There are things you don't understand. Things about Hallie. I understand perfectly. You're both thieves and liars. She'll destroy you if you try this, he hissed. You have no idea what she's capable of. Something in his tone made me pause. Fear. Not of exposure, but of Hallie herself. What are you talking about? Before he could answer, the door opened. Hallie stood there in her wedding gown, a vision in white. Her smile was radiant, but her eyes were cold as they moved from Stefan's hand on my wrist to my face. There you are, darling. Everyone's looking for you. Her voice was honey over steel. The photographer wants some sunset shots? Stefan released me immediately, like a guilty child caught misbehaving. Of course. I was just thanking Lexi for all her hard work today. Hallie's gaze lingered on me. How thoughtful. Though I'm sure Lexi has duties to attend to rather than private conversations with my husband. The emphasis on my husband was subtle but unmistakable. Actually, I said, finding my voice, Stefan was just expressing some concerns about the reception timeline. Was he? Her smile didn't waver. Well, I'm sure you've handled it perfectly, as always. You're nothing if not thorough. The threat in her words was clear only to the three of us. The first dance is scheduled for 8, I said professionally, right after dinner. Perfect. Hallie looped her arm through Stefan's. We'll be ready for our moment in the spotlight. As they left, Stefan glanced back at me, his expression unreadable. Was it a warning? A plea? I couldn't tell. What I did know was that whatever Stefan had been about to tell me about Hallie had frightened him. And now I had to decide, proceed with my plan as intended, or recalibrate based on this new, unsettling dynamic I'd glimpsed between them. The reception was starting. Guests were being seated. And somewhere in the building, Truman was preparing the technical aspects of my revenge. I had minutes to decide whether to pull the trigger or change course entirely. The reception hall glittered with fairy lights and floral arrangements, a perfect backdrop for the perfect couple's perfect day. I moved between tables, checking place cards and centerpieces, the model of efficiency. No one would guess the storm raging inside me. Nicole appeared at my elbow, champagne flute in hand. For appearances, she murmured, passing it to me. You look like you need it. I took a small sip, grateful for the burn in my throat. Stefan knows. What? How? He confronted me in the library. He knows we found the footage. Nicole's eyes widened. Does he know about tonight? He suspects something. I glanced across the room where Stefan and Hallie were greeting guests, their smiles never faltering. But there's something else. Something about Hallie that has him scared. Scared how? I don't know. He tried to warn me, but she interrupted before he could explain. Nicole followed my gaze to the happy couple. So, what's the plan? Still going ahead? The question hung between us. My carefully constructed revenge was primed and ready. Truman had loaded the incriminating videos onto the reception slideshow, set to play during the couple's first dance. One button push, and their perfect facade would shatter in front of everyone they knew. But Stefan's fear nagged at me. What was I missing? I need to talk to Truman, I decided. Where is he? DJ booth. But hurry, dinner's almost over. I made my way to the back of the hall where Truman was adjusting equipment behind his booth. He looked up as I approached. Everything's set, he said before I could speak. Videos will play right after their first dance starts. Remote trigger is under the booth if you want to do the honors. Wait, I said. I need to know something first. In all your surveillance, did you ever see Hallie threaten Stefan? Did she have leverage over him somehow? Truman's expression shifted subtly. Why do you ask? Something Stefan said. He seemed afraid of her. Truman hesitated, then reached for his laptop. There was one conversation I didn't include in what I showed you. Didn't seem relevant to the money situation. He pulled up a video file and turned the screen toward me. It showed Hallie and Stefan in what looked like a heated argument. I don't care if you're having second thoughts, Hallie was saying, her voice ice cold. We're too far in to back out now. This isn't what I signed up for, Stefan replied. The money, fine. But I never agreed to... To what? Say it. Hallie stepped closer to him. You never agreed to what exactly? Stefan seemed to shrink before her. You know what? If you back out now, I'll make sure everyone knows what really happened to your brother. Hallie's voice was barely above a whisper. How you were driving that night, how you left the scene, how you let him take the blame even after he died. My breath caught. Stefan's younger brother had died in a car accident 2 years ago. The official story was that he'd been driving drunk and crashed. Stefan had been devastated. You wouldn't, Stefan said in the video. Try me. Hallie's smile was chilling. Now pull yourself together. We have a wedding to plan. The video ended, leaving me stunned. This wasn't just about money. This was blackmail. When was this recorded? I asked. About 2 months before your breakup, Truman said. There were other conversations like this. She has something on him, something big enough to keep him in line. I felt sick. The Stefan I'd known, or thought I'd known, would never have left his brother to die. But if it was true... Does this change your plan? Truman asked. Before I could answer, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers, announcing dinner was concluding, and the first dance would begin shortly. I don't know, I admitted. This complicates things. How? They still stole your money. They still betrayed you. Yes, but... I stopped, uncertain how to articulate the shift I was feeling. Fatima appeared beside us, slightly breathless. There you are. Hallie's looking for you. Something about the cake-cutting schedule. I'll be right there. Lexi, Fatima's voice dropped. Whatever you're planning, do it because it's right, not because you're hurt. She squeezed my arm and disappeared back into the crowd. I turned back to Truman. Give me a few minutes. I need to talk to Hallie first. You're going to warn her? He looked incredulous. No, I'm going to give her one chance to explain, to make this right. That's a mistake, he warned. She'll manipulate you like she does everyone else. Maybe. I straightened my shoulders. But I need to look her in the eye before I destroy her life. I found Hallie in a small anteroom, adjusting her veil before the first dance. She was alone, a rare moment without her entourage. There you are, she said, seeing me in the mirror. Is it time? Almost. I closed the door behind me. We need to talk first. She turned, her expression curious. About what? About the $300,000 you and Stefan stole from me. The change was instantaneous. Her smile vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. She didn't bother denying it. So you know. She sighed, as if I'd discovered a minor inconvenience rather than a felony. I wondered if you'd figure it out. Why, Hallie? I thought we were friends. Best friends. We were, she shrugged. But friendship doesn't pay for the life I want. And blackmailing Stefan about his brother's death? Was that just business too? That got a reaction, a flicker of surprise before her mask returned. You have been busy, Truman, I assume? I knew he couldn't be trusted. Did Stefan really leave his brother to die? I needed to know. Does it matter? She stepped closer. What matters is what happens next. What do you want, Lexi? Money? I can write you a check right now. I want the truth, all of it. Before I decide what happens during your first dance. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You've planned something. She laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Of course you have, always so thorough. She reached for her clutch and pulled out her phone. Before you do anything rash, you should see this. She tapped the screen and handed it to me. It was a video of me entering the garden shed earlier today, followed by footage of me and Truman discussing our plan for the reception. I had my own insurance policy, Hallie said softly. Did you really think I wouldn't be watching you, that I'd leave anything to chance? My stomach dropped. What do you want? Walk away, right now. Leave the wedding. Delete whatever evidence you think you have, and never contact either of us again. Her voice hardened. Or I release this to everyone, showing how the pathetic, jilted ex-fiancé tried to ruin our wedding out of spite. That's not what happened, and you know it. It's what everyone will believe. She took back her phone. You have until the first dance to decide. Choose wisely. The door opened and Stefan appeared. They're waiting for us, he said, his eyes darting between Hallie and me. Perfect timing, Hallie smiled, all warmth and joy again. Lexi and I were just finishing up. As they left, Stefan caught my eye, his expression a silent plea I couldn't decipher. I stood alone in the anteroom, the walls closing in. Hallie had outplayed me again. Or had she? Maybe there was still a way to expose the truth without destroying myself in the process. The music for the first dance began to swell. I had seconds to decide. The first dance had begun. Hallie and Stefan swayed in the center of the ballroom, bathed in soft spotlight as Etta James's voice filled the air. Guests circled them, phones raised to capture the perfect moment. I stood at the edge of the crowd, the remote trigger heavy in my palm. Hallie caught my eye over Stefan's shoulder and smiled, the smile of someone who believed they'd won. Maybe she had. Her counter-blackmail was clean, simple, and devastating. If I exposed them, she'd destroy what remained of my reputation. But something about her confidence didn't sit right. She'd been too quick to show her hand, too eager to neutralize me, almost as if she feared what I might do. Nicole appeared beside me. What's happening? Truman says you're having second thoughts. Hallie has footage of us planning this, I whispered. She's threatening to release it if I go through with it. Shit! Nicole glanced at the dancing couple. So we're backing off? I watched Stefan's face as he danced with his bride. He looked hollow, going through the motions. A man trapped. No, I decided. We're changing tactics. I handed Nicole the remote trigger. Find Fatima. Tell her to be ready by the main exit in 5 minutes. What are you going to do? Something I should have done from the beginning. Tell the truth. Before she could respond, I walked directly toward the dance floor. Guests parted, perhaps sensing my determination. I tapped the groom on the shoulder, interrupting the perfect first dance. May I cut in? I asked, my voice carrying in the sudden hush. Stefan froze. Hallie's eyes widened in alarm. Lexi, don't, she started. It's tradition, isn't it? I continued, my voice steady. For the maid of honor to dance with the groom? Confusion rippled through the crowd. I wasn't the maid of honor. I wasn't even a bridesmaid. Of course, Stefan said finally, releasing Hallie. One dance. Hallie grabbed his arm. Stefan, no. But it was too late. The guests were watching, murmuring. Any protest would seem strange, suspicious. Just one dance, I assured her, my smile mirroring the one she'd given me earlier. What harm could it do? Stefan took my hand, and we began to dance as Hallie retreated to the edge of the circle, her perfect composure finally cracking. What are you doing? Stefan whispered as we moved across the floor. Getting answers, I replied. Did you kill your brother? His step faltered. What? No? Is that what she told you? She said you were driving the night he died, that you let him take the blame. Pain flashed across his face. I wasn't driving. But I was there. I was supposed to be the designated driver, but I'd been drinking too. When the accident happened, I panicked and ran. By the time I came back with help, he was gone. So she's blackmailing you with the truth that you abandoned him? That, and she fabricated evidence that I was driving. Doctored photos, fake witness statements, enough to convince the police to reopen the case if she released it. The pieces clicked into place. That's why you disappeared. Why you went along with stealing my money, She had you cornered. I'm not innocent, Lexi, his voice cracked. I was a coward that night, and I've been a coward ever since. I let her manipulate me into betraying you, into marrying her. I deserve whatever comes next. The song was ending. I had seconds to decide. Do you have access to the offshore accounts? I asked. Yes, joint access. The money's still there, most of it. And if I expose everything tonight? She'll destroy us both. His eyes met mine. But maybe that's what I deserve. The final notes of the song faded. Applause broke out around us. I stepped back from Stefan, my decision made. Thank you for the dance, I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Then quieter. I'm sorry about your brother. I walked directly to the DJ booth where Truman waited, Hallie's eyes burning into my back. Nicole and Fatima had positioned themselves by the exits as instructed. Change of plans, I told Truman. Do you have a microphone? He handed me one, confusion evident on his face. What about the videos? Not yet. I took a deep breath. I need to say something first. I stepped onto the small platform beside his booth. The microphone feedback cut through the chatter and the room fell silent. I'd like to make a toast, I announced. Hallie was pushing through the crowd toward me, panic in her eyes. Too late. For those who don't know me, my name is Lexi. I was supposed to marry Stefan last year. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Instead, I'm here tonight as the wedding coordinator for his marriage to my former best friend. The room was utterly silent now, every eye on me. I wanted to share a story about friendship and trust. My voice was clear, steady. About how Hallie helped me plan my wedding to Stefan, all while they were having an affair behind my back. Gasps and whispers erupted. Hallie had reached the edge of the platform, her face contorted with rage. But that's not even the most interesting part of their love story, I continued. The most interesting part is how they stole $300,000 from my inheritance, how they planned to flee the country tonight with my money, and how Hallie blackmailed Stefan into going along with it by threatening to frame him for his brother's death. The room exploded in shocked exclamations. Stefan stood motionless in the center of the dance floor, his face unreadable. Lies! Hallie screamed, lunging for the microphone. She's delusional, obsessed with my husband. Am I? I stepped back, nodding to Truman. Then perhaps we should let everyone see the evidence. The lights dimmed, the projector screen descended, and there, in high definition for all their guests to see, was Hallie in a hotel room, counting cash and laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me. 300,000, her voice echoed through the speakers, and the stupid bitch has no idea. What followed was a carefully edited montage. Hallie and Stefan discussing their plan to steal my money, their scheme to disappear after the wedding, and finally Hallie's blackmail about Stefan's brother. When the lights came back up, the room was in chaos. Some guests were leaving in disgust. Others were filming on their phones. In the corner, I spotted two of Stefan's relatives who worked in law enforcement, their expressions grim as they approached the couple. Hallie turned to me, her beautiful face twisted with hatred. You think you've won? I'll destroy you for this. I held up my phone, showing her the screen. It was recording. More evidence? I asked quietly. Or should I play the video where you just threatened me again? For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. It's over, Hallie, I said. The truth is out. All of it. As security began escorting her away from me, she made one last desperate lunge, knocking a champagne tower to the floor in a spectacular crash of glass and liquid. In the chaos that followed, I felt a hand on my arm. Fatima. Time to go, she said gently. You've done what you came to do. As we walked toward the exit, Stefan called my name. I turned to see him standing alone amid the wreckage of his wedding, looking lost. I'm sorry, he said simply. I nodded once, acknowledging but not absolving. Then I walked away, leaving behind the shattered remains of what had once been the most important relationships in my life. Outside in the cool night air, surrounded by Nicole and Fatima, I finally let myself breathe. The weight I'd carried for so long began to lift. Not completely, some burdens leave permanent marks, but enough to feel like I could move forward. What now? Nicole asked. I looked up at the stars, bright and clear above us. Now I start over. The police station hummed with fluorescent lights and hushed conversations. I sat on an uncomfortable plastic chair, my event coordinator outfit wrinkled from the night's chaos. It was nearly 3 a.m., but sleep felt impossible. Ms. Tucker? A detective approached, notepad in hand. We're almost finished with your statement, just a few more questions. I nodded, exhaustion seeping into my bones. For hours, I'd recounted every detail, the stolen inheritance, the blackmail, the elaborate wedding scheme. The detective had listened with professional detachment, occasionally asking for clarification. The offshore accounts Mr. Webb mentioned, she said. Do you have any documentation of those? Truman has copies of everything, I replied. He's been cooperating with your colleagues. She made a note. And you're certain you want to press charges? Against both of them? The question hung in the air. Despite everything, some small part of me hesitated. These were people I had once loved deeply. Yes, I said finally. I'm certain, she nodded. We'll be in touch. You're free to go for now. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. Fatima waited in her car, head resting against the window. She startled awake when I opened the passenger door. Hey, she said, blinking sleep from her eyes. How did it go? As well as could be expected. I buckled my seatbelt. They're both in custody. Hallie for fraud and blackmail, Stefan as an accessory. Good, she squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. We drove in silence through the empty streets. Not toward my apartment, I realized, but toward the beach. Why are we going to the shore? I asked. Because you need it. Fatima glanced at me. Some things can only be processed with your toes in the sand. The beach was deserted at this hour, the tide low and retreating. We kicked off our shoes and walked along the wet sand, the cold water occasionally lapping at our ankles. The horizon was a watercolor of pinks and oranges, beautiful in its impermanence. I keep thinking about what happens next, I said, breaking our silence. The trial, the publicity, everyone knowing what happened. Are you worried about that? I considered the question. Strangely, no. I spent so long hiding the truth, from others, from myself. There's something freeing about everything being in the open. And the money? The detective thinks they can recover most of it. The accounts were frozen as soon as they were identified. I dug my toes into the wet sand. But honestly, I don't care as much about that as I thought I would. No, it's just money. What I really lost was trust, faith in my own judgment. I looked out at the horizon. That's harder to get back. Fatima nodded, but not impossible. We walked further down the beach, the rising sun warming our backs. A text message chimed on my phone. Nicole, checking in. I'd only known her a day, yet she'd stood beside me through everything. Some connections form in minutes that others can't build in years. You know what's strange? I said, typing a quick reply to Nicole. I keep waiting to feel vindicated, triumphant, but mostly I just feel sad. That makes sense, Fatima replied. You didn't just lose a fiancé and a friend, you lost your vision of the future, your trust in people. That's worth grieving. We reached a small tidal pool where tiny fish darted between rocks, life continuing in its small, determined way despite the changing tides. Royal, my therapist, once told me that healing isn't about erasing what happened, I said. It's about integrating it into your story in a way that doesn't define you. Wise words. I didn't understand them until now. I looked back at our footprints in the sand, already being erased by the incoming tide. I don't want this betrayal to be the thing that defines me. So what will define you instead? The question hung between us as we turned back toward the parking lot. What would define me now? Not victimhood, not revenge, not even justice. I think, I said slowly, I want to be defined by how I rebuild, by who I choose to trust and how I choose to love after knowing how much it can hurt. As we approached Fatima's car, I noticed a figure waiting nearby. Truman, looking as exhausted as I felt. The police finished with you? I asked as we reached him. He nodded. For now. They'll need us both for the trial. Thank you, I said, for everything. Don't thank me yet. He handed me a flash drive. There's something you should see, something I held back. I took it, wary. More evidence? A different kind. Watch it alone. His eyes were serious. It might change how you feel about everything. After Truman left, Fatima drove me home. I clutched the flash drive, curious and apprehensive. Want me to stay while you watch it? She asked as we pulled up to my apartment. I shook my head. I need to do this part alone. Inside, I plugged the drive into my laptop. A single video file appeared. I clicked play, bracing myself. It was Stefan, sitting alone in what looked like a hotel room recording himself. Lexi, if you're watching this, it means everything has fallen apart. His voice was steady, but his eyes were red-rimmed. I recorded this as insurance, in case something happened to me, but also as a confession. He explained everything, how he'd discovered Hallie had been embezzling from my accounts months before he disappeared, how he'd confronted her and been ensnared in her blackmail scheme, how he'd agreed to the fake relationship to try to recover my money from inside. I failed you, he said simply. I thought I could outsmart her, protect you, and fix everything. Instead, I became part of the problem. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when I had to pretend I did. The video ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. Not for the relationship I'd lost, that was truly gone, but for the complexity of human weakness, for the ways fear can corrupt even love. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. The morning sun illuminated the city, people beginning their days unaware of how lives could shatter and reform overnight. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. Breakfast tomorrow? I know a place that serves healing in waffle form. I smiled through my tears and typed back, yes, I'd like that. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to Royal's number. It was time to schedule a session, not to process my betrayal anymore, but to begin the harder, more important work of rebuilding trust, starting with myself. The flash drive sat on my desk, a small repository of complicated truths. I wouldn't delete it, but I wouldn't watch it again either. Some chapters need to be acknowledged but not revisited. I opened my bedroom window, letting in the fresh morning air. For the first time in over a year, I felt the weight of betrayal lifting, not gone, but transformed into something I could carry without being crushed. I was not defined by what they had done to me. I was defined by what I would do next, and I was ready to find out exactly what that would be.
I'm Maura. My parents took $60,000 from my safe, money I worked years to save, and used it to fly my brother to Hawaii. They called it punishment for being too cold, too independent. I thought that was the worst of it, but it wasn't. They installed a hidden camera in my room, told my old teacher I was unemployed, moved my brother's girlfriend into my space, and somehow, I was still the problem. Was it really about family? Or about control dressed up as love? I woke up before the sun did. The ceiling fan above me spun quietly, casting slow-moving shadows across the beige walls of the room I never chose to return to. I hadn't opened the blinds in weeks, not because I wanted darkness, but because pretending the world outside didn't exist was easier than facing the one inside this house. Down the hall, I could already hear Dorian's footsteps. Heavy, aimless. He moved like the house belonged to him, because to everyone else, it might as well have. I got dressed quickly, pulling my hoodie over my tank top, tying my hair into a low bun, and slipping into my worn slippers. Today, I had a pitch, a big one, a UX redesign proposal for a client in Seattle. If it landed, I'd finally have something of my own again. I made my way to the dining table, which doubled as my office, since Dorian had taken over the spare room. I plugged in my laptop, booted up Zoom, and inhaled deeply. For a moment, it was quiet. Then I heard it, that distinct dull crash from upstairs, followed by my brother's voice. Maura? We've got a problem. I closed my eyes, took another breath, and walked toward the sound like I was heading into a courtroom. My laptop was face down on the hallway carpet, The screen cracked straight across like a spiderweb had colonized it. Dorian stood there holding a game controller, guilt barely brushing the edges of his face. "You were gaming?" I asked. "It was just for a minute. Yours had better RAM. I thought—" "You thought it was okay to touch something I need to survive?" He shrugged. "It's not like I did it on purpose." "Of course you didn't. You never do." That's when Mom chimed in from the kitchen without even looking up from her morning coffee. "Maura, honey, if it's so important, why don't you keep it locked up?" I turned to her, stunned. "He broke my work computer. And you're blaming me?" She clicked her tongue. "You always make a fuss. It's just a computer, not the end of the world." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I didn't. Because screaming in this house didn't solve anything. It only gave them more ammunition. Maura's dramatic. Maura can't let things go. Maura's impossible to live with. So I walked back downstairs in silence, cradling the broken laptop like a broken part of myself. I texted my client an apology and asked to reschedule the call. I knew the damage wasn't just to the hardware. I sat at the table staring at the wall. Not long after, I noticed something odd behind the bookshelf nearby, a glint that didn't belong. I leaned in, brushed aside a few old cookbooks, and saw a small black lens. No way. I followed the cable down the shelf, traced it behind the wall panel and into the hallway closet. Buried under old winter coats and my father's broken drill set, it led to a mobile phone. His. "Dad," I called out, my voice low but shaking. He emerged slowly, holding a mug that read, #1 Grandpa, even though he had no grandkids. "What is this?" I held up the device with the live feed from my bedroom. He barely blinked. "We just wanted to make sure you were okay." "We?" "Your mother and I. We worry. You've been distant." "Distant?" I repeated. "You're watching me sleep, Dad." He placed his mug down calmly, like we were discussing garden mulch. "Better safe than sorry." That phrase echoed in my mind. They'd used it before, when they read my mail, when they borrowed money from my college fund, when they told my ex not to marry me. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling but heart suddenly still. I took the broken laptop, placed it in a drawer, and opened my backup drive. I began uploading every file I had, contracts, pitches, tax documents, to a cloud server under a new name. I encrypted everything. I wasn't sure why yet, but something in me, something small, quiet, and burning, told me it was time to prepare. I looked around the room again. The dusty curtains, the carpet stains, the photo of me and Dorian from 10 years ago still hanging by the closet. This used to be home. Now it was just another problem to solve. 3 days passed. Long ones. Measured not by hours but by how many apologies I swallowed to keep the peace. I had borrowed a replacement laptop from my company's equipment pool. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Barely. That morning I got up before anyone else again. I cleared the kitchen table, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and lit a candle by the window. 1 hour. All I needed was 1 hour of quiet. Just 60 uninterrupted minutes to deliver a pitch that could secure me a 6-month freelance retainer with a California-based firm. I texted my family group chat. Zoom meeting from 11 to 12. Please keep things quiet. It's important. Colleen saw it but didn't respond. Dorian left it on read. Classic. By 10:55, I was set up. Notes in front of me, slides ready, hair brushed, top changed, pajama bottoms hidden beneath the frame. The standard remote work armor. As I clicked into the waiting room, my heart was steady but cautious. The call began smoothly. I introduced myself, made a little joke about working from a creative chaos zone, and they laughed. Good sign. One of the partners asked about my research process, and I leaned in, confident. That's when it started. First the thumping, like a bass from downstairs. Then the unmistakable beat of EDM music bleeding through the ceiling. I tried to speak louder over it, smiling tightly. Then a loud, "Yo!" echoed from upstairs. The music got louder, and then the unmistakable sound of a soda can popping open, followed by raucous laughter. Someone shouted, "Shotgun that one, bro!" A second later, something shattered. Maybe a plate, maybe my chances. I quickly muted myself, bolted up the stairs, and burst into Dorian's room. He was shirtless, holding a beer, laughing with 3 of his friends like it was spring break. My heart dropped. Not because of the noise, but because none of them even looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing?" I hissed. Dorian just raised an eyebrow. "Relax, it's just a couple friends. You're always so uptight." "I texted. I asked for 1 hour." He turned to his buddies. "Did y'all hear about this Zoom meeting emergency? Should we call the governor?" They all laughed. Colleen suddenly appeared behind me, holding a bowl of pretzels. "Sweetie, boys need to let loose. They're still young." "Dorian is 35, I snapped. She waved it off like I was reading a weather report. "Still figuring things out." I turned and walked away without saying another word. Back downstairs, I rejoined the Zoom call, or tried to, but the screen had gone dark. My email pinged seconds later. "We appreciate your time, Maura, but we're going to move forward with someone else." The words hit me harder than the laptop crash 3 days ago. I sat there, frozen, hearing nothing but muffled laughter upstairs and the blood pounding behind my eyes. An hour later, as I sat at the back steps sipping what was left of my cold coffee, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Maura?" The voice was warm, familiar. "It's Miss Green, from high school, English Lit. I saw your mom at the store yesterday and, well, she mentioned you were back home and no longer working. I just wanted to check in, dear. Are you okay?" For a moment, I couldn't respond. I'd spent over a decade building a reputation. Freelancing wasn't always respected, but I had clients, a network, testimonials. Now, apparently, I was the daughter who moved back in and gave up. I forced a smile into my voice. "I'm all right, just taking some time to recalibrate." She sounded relieved. "Good. Just remember, you were always the strongest in the room, even when the room didn't know it." We said goodbye. I hung up slowly. Then I sat there for a long while. Phone on my lap, coffee forgotten. That call wasn't malicious. It came from care. But the message behind it? The damage had already been done. They weren't just hurting me inside these walls anymore. They were rewriting my story to the world outside. By sunset, I was still at the back steps. I scrolled through LinkedIn, staring blankly at job listings in Colorado, Seattle, even Vancouver, anywhere that didn't know my last name. I started to wonder, if I just disappeared, what version of me would they invent next? The unstable daughter? The one who couldn't make it on her own? The burden? That night, after everyone had gone to bed, or passed out, I sat in the hallway with my phone and began recording. Quietly. Just my own thoughts at first. Then snippets, the way Dorian had screamed freeloader at me when I said no to lending him gas money. Mom's passive-aggressive reminders that I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Dad's silence that somehow always screamed louder than them both. I didn't plan to use the recordings, but I needed to remember what was real, before they twisted it again. A week had gone by, and I had barely said more than 3 full sentences to anyone in this house. Most days, I kept my headphones on even when the music wasn't playing. A quiet protest or maybe a shield. I kept to myself, did my client work, answered emails, and cooked only what I would eat. I'd learned the hard way that even a plate of leftovers could be used against me in a family argument. But that morning, something threw me back into a memory I didn't want to revisit. It came without warning. The flash of an old conversation with my mother, the kind you try to forget, but always seems to resurface at the worst times. It was around 4 months ago. Dorian had racked up nearly $7,000 on a credit card. He came to me in the kitchen, holding the bill like it was a menu. "I just need a cosigner, just for 6 months. The bank said it'll boost my score." I had said no. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew how this went. He'd forget or ignore, and I'd be stuck cleaning up after another one of his growth phases. When I told him I wouldn't do it, he stormed off. That night, Mom came into my room. "You're turning your back on your family," she whispered like it was a curse. "He's your brother. You think that fancy job makes you better than us?" I didn't answer her. I just stared at the spot where she used to hang my 3rd grade art award. It wasn't there anymore, probably covered by one of Dorian's gaming posters now. That memory faded back into the present as I opened the safe in my closet to pull out some cash. I needed $400 for a design plugin license, one that wasn't cheap, but necessary for the proposal I was building. The safe opened with a soft click. I reached for the envelope marked work expenses. It was lighter than usual. I unfolded it. Gone. Not just $400. $2,500 in total. Missing. I checked the backup envelope. The emergency one. Same thing. My breath caught in my chest. I closed the safe and walked slowly out of my room like I was stepping through a dream, down the hall, into the living room. Colleen was folding towels. "Did you take cash from my safe?" She didn't look up. "We needed to pay off a chunk of Dorian's credit. You weren't using it." I stared at her. "Excuse me?" She dropped a towel onto the couch and stood up, folding her arms. "You always act like your money is separate from the family. But where do you think we'd be without you? Don't you think it's time you stopped keeping score? It wasn't yours to take." "Oh, Maura, it's not stealing, it's sharing. You always think the worst." Dorian strolled in from the garage, wiping grease off his hands with a kitchen towel. "Chill out, I'll pay you back eventually," he said, grabbing a soda from the fridge. "Seriously? You're acting like I cleaned out your retirement account." I didn't answer. There was no point. That evening, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the loops and curves of my Aunt Teresa's writing immediately. I sat on the porch to open it. Inside was a short letter. "Dear Maura, I hope this reaches you in peace. I wanted to say something you deserve to know. At the last family brunch, Colleen told everyone you'd been unstable lately, that the breakup changed you, and you haven't been the same since moving home. I didn't believe her, but others, well, they nodded. No one said anything. I'm sorry for not speaking up in that moment, but I wanted you to hear it from someone who doesn't want to see your name dragged through the mud. Love, Teresa." I read the letter twice, then once more. Unstable. That word echoed. It wasn't just gossip. It was a loaded word. The kind that stuck. The kind that made people whisper in parking lots or pass glances at weddings. I folded the letter carefully, walked back inside, and locked my bedroom door. Then I changed the combination on my safe. That same night, I ordered a second one. A smaller safe, the kind you could bolt behind drywall or stash in a vent. I paid extra for express delivery. When it arrived 2 days later, I didn't tell anyone. Just waited until midnight, unscrewed the vent behind my bed, and placed the new lockbox deep inside. I added a flash drive, Aunt Teresa's letter, and a hard copy of every transaction they'd pulled from me in the last year. Not for revenge, just for the record. I needed something to hold on to, something that proved I wasn't imagining things. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look fragile. I looked practiced. Like someone who had rehearsed a script so many times that no one could tell it was a performance anymore. They thought I was overreacting. They thought I was too emotional. What they didn't know was that I was paying for Dorian's medication refills, Dad's heart pills, half the groceries in the fridge, and the gas in the car Dorian drove daily. They thought I was ungrateful, but gratitude goes both ways. And in this house, it only ever flowed toward one side. I stared into my own eyes and whispered quietly, "You're not losing it. You're just living in a story they want you to forget. And if they kept rewriting my story, I'd start writing my own." A full week slipped by, one long stretch of avoidance padded with headphones and polite lies. I spent more time at cafes, sometimes just sitting with my laptop open and a half-drunk coffee beside me, pretending I had somewhere else to be, somewhere better than the house that drained me one sigh at a time. Late Friday afternoon, I returned home after meeting a client near Midtown. I'd closed a small contract. Nothing major, but enough to feel like I still had something left to offer the world. As I stepped inside, balancing my keys, tote bag, and laptop, I caught sight of a suitcase near the guest room. It was open, and not mine. Soft humming floated from inside. A female voice. Then I heard Dorian. "Babe, just throw your stuff wherever. My mom doesn't care." I froze, walked slowly toward the door, poked my head in. There she was. Early 20s maybe, long fake nails, box-dyed red hair, unpacking her duffel bags onto the bed. She looked up at me like I was interrupting a Target commercial. "Oh, hey!" she chirped. You must be Mora. I've heard so much about you. I didn't answer. I turned to Dorian, who was digging through a basket of folded laundry. Mine. She's staying here? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. He barely looked up. Yeah, just for a little while. Her roommate situation went south. You didn't ask me. It's not like you pay rent or something, he muttered. Before I could speak again, Colleen's voice came floating from the kitchen. It's his house too, Mora. You don't get to dictate everything. I live here. She came around the corner holding a half-peeled banana and a paper towel. You're always acting like everything's about you. It's not. I said nothing, just walked to my room, set my laptop down, and sat at the edge of the bed for a full minute, staring at my window like the trees outside could explain how any of this made sense. That night, I tried to work from the dining table. Dorian and his girlfriend had taken over the living room, loud TikToks blaring from her phone, open bags of chips rustling, soda fizzing. They laughed every few seconds like it was a game show. My call started at 6 p.m. sharp. A design review with a healthcare client based in Minneapolis. 15 minutes in, the client paused. I'm sorry, is that music in the background? I muted quickly, dashed into the hallway. Can you two keep it down for half an hour? Dorian smirked. If you need a library, go to one. His girlfriend added, We're not that loud. You're just sensitive. I shut the door and tried to breathe. Back on the call, I pushed through. But by the time I was sharing my screen, the client had gone cold. They ended it with, We appreciate the effort, Mora, but we need a more consistent working environment. Let's circle back in a few months. The screen went dark. And just like that, another $5,000 retainer vanished. I sat frozen, hands still on the keyboard. This wasn't just noise anymore. This was erosion. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood in the center of the living room and said, We need to talk. Dorian paused the TV. Colleen walked in slowly, arms crossed. His girlfriend stayed on the couch, munching popcorn like it was entertainment. I kept my voice even. This ends here, the chaos, the disrespect. You can live like this, but not with me. I won't fund it, I won't enable it, and I won't stay silent about it. Colleen rolled her eyes. You've always had a flair for drama. Dorian scoffed. So now you're the victim again? No, I said clearly. I'm just the only adult in this house. The room fell quiet. I let it hang for a beat, then added, One more move against me, and I act. I didn't wait for replies. I turned and walked back to my room. The next morning, I started making quiet changes, boxed up half my bookshelf, folded off-season clothes and slid them into labeled bins. Nothing dramatic, nothing fast. I updated my cloud passwords, set up two-factor authentication, downloaded copies of all my client contracts, stored them on a private drive, and mailed a backup to my P.O. box, a new one I'd opened in Buckhead 2 days ago. I checked the property title of the house, still in my name. They didn't know that, but they would. Sunday morning in Atlanta felt unusually still. I'd made myself a cup of tea, not coffee. Something about the gentleness of it helped me think more clearly. I planned to transfer a portion of my savings into a high-yield account I'd recently opened. After all, if I was going to start over, I needed to secure every cent I'd worked for. I unlocked the closet, then the safe inside, a simple matte black model, nothing flashy, but reliable. The combination clicked. I pulled open the door. Empty. No envelopes, no stacks. Not even the folder labeled emergency. It took a moment for my brain to register what I was seeing. I looked again, even reached in, as if the money had simply turned invisible. $60,000. Gone. Not reduced. Not borrowed. Gone. A wave of disbelief tightened across my chest. My heart began to thud in my ears. Not fast, just hard. I stood frozen for a minute, maybe two, staring into the dark hollow where my security used to sit. I didn't scream. I didn't rush. I just closed the safe gently and walked down the hall. Dorian was in the kitchen, eating cereal straight from the mixing bowl. Colleen sat across from him, browsing resort packages on her tablet. Lester was at the table, sipping coffee and flipping through an old issue of Southern Living. I didn't ask a question. I just said, Where is it? Colleen looked up, all innocence. Where's what, sweetie? My savings, all of it. She blinked, then smiled, like I'd just asked about the weather. We used it, she said casually, for something important. My voice was quiet. You used it? Dorian jumped in. Don't freak out, it's for the trip. We're going to Hawaii next week. Hawaii? Colleen leaned forward, almost excited. Maura, this isn't just a vacation, this is a reset, for all of us. You stole from me. Oh, don't be dramatic, she scoffed. You've been so cold, so obsessed with your career. This was a wake-up call. Lester finally spoke. You've lost sight of what matters. You needed to learn that money isn't the answer to everything. You decided that for me? I asked, barely above a whisper. You make 6 figures, Dorian added. It's not like you're broke. Chill. I stared at him. I couldn't feel my hands, my legs. My lips were numb. It was like my body had left before my mind had. Colleen stood and patted my shoulder. You'll thank us later. We're healing as a family. Maybe when we get back, you'll see it. I stepped back, said nothing, and turned away. In my room, I closed the door, locked it, and sat on the floor. It took a full hour before I moved again. They'd called it a punishment, for being distant, for protecting my peace, for not handing them everything I had. I stared at the deed again on my tablet, pulled up from my earlier search. My name. No cosigners. No caveats. They'd broken the last rule I'd never spoken out loud. You can hurt me with words, but not my future. And now they had. That night, I opened my laptop and sent an encrypted folder to an old friend of mine, Veronica, a corporate attorney now based in Philadelphia. No context, just a subject line. Need help, no drama, just law. Inside the folder, screenshots of previous transactions, ATM receipts, voice memos, photos of every envelope and safe combination I'd once shared. Veronica replied within 10 minutes. Understood. Start documenting utility transfers. I'll handle the paper trail. By the following morning, I'd made calls to the electric, water, and internet companies. Set them to transfer into my name by Friday. I scheduled a locksmith for Saturday, the day after they left. Yes, left for their healing trip. I also booked 3 round-trip tickets from Atlanta to Honolulu, all in their names, all refundable, but only one-way returns, just to make it easier. Then I visited the backup safe, tucked behind the vent, and added a new note. In thick black marker, I wrote, You broke trust. Now watch what I rebuild. Later that night, we sat around the table eating takeout. Colleen didn't feel like cooking before the trip. Everyone was chatty. Dorian asked, So, can we count on you to watch the mail while we're gone? I smiled. Of course, I'll take care of everything. Colleen raised her glass. To fresh starts. I clinked mine with hers and nodded. Enjoy Hawaii. They all laughed and went on planning spa appointments and snorkeling excursions. None of them noticed me texting the locksmith. None of them saw me copy the security footage from the porch cam. None of them read my eyes, but they would. The morning after they left for Hawaii, I drove straight to my bank before sunrise. There were no lines. I walked in, calm, like any other customer. I'd like to close all co-signed accounts, I told the teller, sliding over my ID, and freeze anything tied to these joint credit cards, permanently. She blinked, hesitated for just a moment, and nodded. One moment, Miss Hayward. While she worked behind the screen, I felt a small flicker of something new. Not fear, not anger, control. After that, I visited each utility website, power, water, gas, internet, logged in, clicked transfer service. I typed in my apartment address, the one I'd secured last month under a different LLC just in case. By 4 p.m., every connection to this house, every shared responsibility, every thread of financial obligation I'd carried for them was severed. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a real estate agent I'd gone to college with, Matt. He still called me M by habit, short for my middle name. Are you sure about this? He asked, scanning the deed again. You'll get a decent offer, even off market. It's a big lot for the area. I'm not just sure, I said. I'm ready. He nodded. I'll keep it private. You'll have a signed offer by Wednesday. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt unburdened. Over the next 3 days, I worked methodically. Room by room, I boxed up every item that didn't belong to me. Dorian's sneakers, boxed. Mom's framed quotes from the Bible, wrapped in bubble paper. Dad's fishing gear he hadn't touched in 3 years, taped shut with a printed label, Newark. Each box had a name, a destination, a tracking number. Even Dorian's PlayStation, still plugged into the living room TV, went into its original box with every cord neatly coiled. I didn't throw away anything. I just removed it all. The house grew emptier, quieter, lighter. I packed the last of their things by Friday night, then left the final box on the porch for the shipping company. I watched from the upstairs window as the delivery team loaded everything into the back of a van. Gone. By Saturday morning, I moved into my new apartment across town. A furnished one-bedroom with a clean white kitchen and thick windows that muted the world. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without checking over my shoulder. They returned from Hawaii 2 days later. The airport footage, which I pulled up from the doorcam archive later, showed them laughing, tanned, Dorian pushing 2 oversized bags with stickers that read, "Aloha from Maui." Their Uber pulled into the driveway. The porch was bare, except for one laminated sign taped to the front door. "Property sold, new ownership. Welcome package inside." From my parked car down the street, I watched Colleen squint at it, then rattle the doorknob. It didn't turn. Lester tried his key. Nothing. Dorian knocked loudly. "Maura!" he shouted. "Open up!" That's when I pulled into the driveway, rolled down the window, and said calmly, "Get in, I'll explain on the way." They hesitated. "Now," I said. They climbed in, silent. No one spoke until we were halfway out of Atlanta. "Where are we going?" Colleen finally asked. "New Jersey." Dorian scoffed. "What is this, some kind of punishment?" "You told me I needed a lesson," I replied, eyes steady on the road. "Consider this a course correction." Lester muttered something about overreacting. Colleen kept repeating, "You can't just kick us out. That house was ours." "No, it wasn't," I said. "Not legally, not financially, and not morally." 3 hours later, we pulled up to a modest blue house in a quiet Newark suburb. Velma was already waiting outside in a flour-dusted apron, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She stepped forward and opened the front door. "Welcome. Room assignments are taped to the fridge. First meal is at 6. First shift starts at 7. No slackers." Colleen gasped. "You can't be serious." Velma arched an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm dead serious. You wanted structure, right?" I didn't go inside. I placed their final envelopes, IDs, new debit cards, and one bus schedule, on the porch step. Velma gave me one long look. "You okay?" "I am now," I said. She nodded once, slowly. "Good. You did the hard part." As I drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't have to. I could feel the shift in my chest, like the ground beneath me had finally gone still. My hands stayed on the wheel. No trembling, no second thoughts. I hadn't just reclaimed my house. I'd reclaimed myself. It had been 7 days since I dropped them at Velma's front steps, and already the air inside the house was thicker than any garlic-scented kitchen steam. Velma ran her restaurant like an orchestra, precise, disciplined, and loud when it needed to be. Her voice echoed every morning before sunrise. Shoes on, hair tied back, no phones. By now, I'd fallen into a rhythm. Light prep, remote work on my laptop, inventory checks. I wasn't trying to be part of the family anymore. I was just witnessing them come face to face with themselves. Dorian, on the other hand, was unraveling. He slept late, skipped his assigned kitchen rotation, and claimed he was managing stress. Velma didn't respond to that. She just handed him a checklist and walked away. By the third time he ditched duty, something snapped. It was Thursday, just before lunch rush. I was sitting in the corner of the dining area, double-checking wireframe designs for a new client. My coffee was still warm. Then Dorian stormed in, arms flailing, face flushed. "I'm not flipping pizzas like some servant." I didn't even look up at first. He slammed a tray onto the counter, sending utensils scattering. "You set this whole thing up, didn't you? This is your fault." I met his eyes slowly, calm as a lake. "This is the first honest job you've ever been offered, Dorian. You've always thought you were better than me. Don't pretend now." "You made that comparison, not me." He turned to our mother, who was scrubbing a cutting board like it owed her something. "You're just letting her talk to me like that?" Colleen glanced up, half-heartedly. "Maybe if you helped around here more, she wouldn't have to." Dorian's eyes went wild. In one sudden movement, he picked up a pan from the sink and hurled it into the dish pit. It clanged against the metal like a fire alarm. Velma walked in just in time to see it land. She didn't yell. She didn't blink. She picked up a mop, handed it to him, and said, "Clean it, now." He sneered. "You've got to be kidding." Velma held out an apron this time. "Fine, don't clean, then clean out. My house isn't a shelter, it's a system." I stood. "I gave you years to grow up, years, and all you did was make excuses." Dorian turned to me, voice shaking. "All you ever do is judge me, like you're some perfect daughter." I didn't raise my voice. "I judged you the day you took $60,000 of my savings and called it a lesson in humility." The room went silent. Colleen's sponge dropped into the sink. Even Lester, usually a shadow in a chair, muttered, "He's not wrong to be angry, but he's not right either." Velma crossed her arms. "Anger doesn't bake bread. Responsibility does." I looked at Dorian, but I didn't soften. "You wanted to live like an adult? Welcome to adulthood. It doesn't wait for your feelings." He stomped out. We heard his door slam minutes later. Dinner came and went. He didn't show up. But just after 9, the hallway creaked. I peeked through the back prep room window and saw him standing there, a duffel bag in hand. He looked around. No one said a word. Colleen turned her face toward the TV. He stood there for a beat longer, then dropped the bag. Without a word, he walked into the kitchen, picked up the mop from where Velma had left it, and began wiping the floor. She didn't thank him. She just nodded once and went back to rolling dough. Later that night, I slipped out the back door and leaned against the brick wall by the trash bins. The alley behind the restaurant smelled of tomato paste and oregano. But for once, I didn't feel buried. I just felt still, like I had cleared enough space in my chest to breathe fully again. Maybe for the first time. They thought I came to break them. I only came to show them the mirror. What they do with it now is their choice. It was a Thursday morning, gray skies pressing low over the cracked sidewalk out back, the scent of rain still clinging to the dumpsters. Inside, the restaurant was warm, the kind of heat that came from dough proofing and something old simmering on the stove. I was folding napkins when Velma walked in without her usual clatter. She nodded at the empty seat beside me and said, "You got a minute?" I nodded and put the napkins aside. She didn't sit right away. She reached for a flour container, twisted the lid slowly. Then finally she lowered herself beside me, her elbows resting on the table. "You know," she started, "pride and pain, they can look real similar, especially on smart women." I didn't say anything. Velma took a long pause before continuing. "I've been around people who were right, righteous even, but sometimes being right still don't fill the hole, especially when bitterness sets up camp." She turned toward me then, her eyes softer than usual. "I've seen what they took from you, Mora. I don't need details to know it was real. But justice held in one hand and silence in the other, that don't heal nobody." I stared at a knot in the wooden table. My fingers ran over it slowly. Velma reached for the rolling pin, like the conversation was already done. "Let them be the ones to earn back peace. You just don't let their damage become your compass." I didn't respond, but something in me shifted. Not cracked open, just shifted. By Saturday, something else changed. I came downstairs early, before the clatter of prep began. The air smelled of yeast and oregano again, but the music was different. It was quieter. Not from the radio, but from the energy in the room. Dorian was already there, not scrolling his phone, not sipping orange juice while the rest of us worked. He was mopping, carefully. Later, he ran food to a table, then wiped down the windows without being told. When one of the delivery orders came back missing an item, he didn't blame the driver. He fixed it himself. No apology, no speech, just work. I didn't trust it, but I noticed. That night I was in my room upstairs, filing invoices and trying to figure out if I could afford a second design assistant when there was a knock. I hesitated, then opened the door. Dorian stood there, holding a white envelope. He didn't meet my eyes right away. "I know what I did," he said quietly. "I know I can't take it back. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to do better, Not for Mom or Velma or show. For real. This time. He handed me the envelope. Inside was $1,200 in small bills. Tips, he said. All mine. Been saving all week. It's not 60 grand, but… I didn't say anything. I just folded the envelope and placed it on my desk. Then I nodded. Once. He looked relieved. Not proud, not smug, just lighter. And then he left. Sunday dinner came around, and for the first time in months, I joined them at the table. Velma passed the bread. Lester poured drinks. Colleen asked if I wanted salad first. No one made a speech. But when dinner ended, Colleen stood up and started doing the dishes without a word. Lester mentioned that the local hardware store needed part-time help, and he might stop by tomorrow. I didn't reply, but I didn't leave either. After the dishes were stacked and the kitchen was quiet again, I went upstairs, pulled out a sticky note, and wrote something simple. Let's not repeat what we buried. 1 mistake is a lesson. 2 is a pattern. I stuck it on the fridge. Then I went outside, leaned against the wooden porch rail, and exhaled. It wasn't healing yet, but it was something. They didn't need to say thank you, because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for one. It had been a month of no yelling through walls, no footsteps stomping past midnight, no passive-aggressive comments laced into dinner. Just me, my apartment, my rules. That morning, I placed the manila envelope into my canvas tote and headed toward Velma's house. I wasn't nervous, not like before. My shoulders didn't curl inward anymore. My jaw didn't lock. It was early, before prep began at the restaurant. The sidewalks in Newark still shimmered with dew. I passed the bakery where I sometimes grabbed muffins on Mondays, and the bus stop where I used to see my dad stand awkwardly, waiting for Colleen after doctor appointments. When I reached Velma's porch, I didn't knock, just let myself in like I always used to. They were gathered in the kitchen, Dorian scrubbing a pan, Colleen wiping down the counters, Lester reading something off his phone. I cleared my throat. Colleen looked up first. Mora? I'm not staying long. I pulled the envelope from my bag and set it on the table. What's this? Lester asked, reaching for it. Final paperwork, from the house. I met his eyes. It's over. The money's been split 3 ways, fairly. It's clean and it's legal. I don't want it hanging over me, or you. Dorian put the sponge down. You didn't have to. I did. I cut him off gently. Not for you, for me. Colleen pressed her lips together, nodding. No protest, no defense. Dorian stepped forward. I know I've said a lot of things that didn't help, but I'm still showing up. I'm still trying. He didn't try to hug me. Just let the words sit there. I looked at him, really looked. He was tired. He had circles under his eyes. But he also had calluses now. From work. From effort. I see it, I said. That's enough for today. Velma stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. She's right. Some days, showing up is enough. The restaurant smelled like buttered dough and black coffee. Velma walked me to the door, a mason jar in her hand. Tomato basil. Use it when life feels too bland, she said, pushing it into my tote. I don't know if they'll ever be… different, I admitted. They won't be who you needed, she said, but neither will you, and that's okay. I nodded. Then I stepped back out into the street. The walk to my apartment was slow. I stopped at the corner florist to buy myself a sunflower. Just one. Back home, I set the jar on my counter, placed the flower into a glass, and sat by the window with my laptop. A new email blinked in bold. Subject, Remote UX Partnership Inquiry from Rebecca K., Client Services Director. I read the message twice. A long-term contract, good pay, creative freedom. I hit accept. Then I watered the small potted lavender by the windowsill, rearranged some books, hung a new calendar, no alarms, no slammed doors, just the quiet hum of my own rhythm. Later that evening, I opened the top drawer of my desk. Tucked into the back was a photo of me and Dorian, both of us maybe 8 or 9, covered in cake at someone's birthday party. I didn't frame it. I didn't toss it. I just taped it to the back of the drawer and closed it slowly. They broke me, I whispered. Then they bent. And that was the truth. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but a space between, a place to stand. Because I wasn't waiting for perfect anymore. I was living with real. Before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. I used to think silence kept the peace, that if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd hear my pain. But silence doesn't teach people how to treat you. It only teaches them how much you'll tolerate. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever poured yourself out for people who only called it too much, I want you to hear me clearly. You're not too much. You're not selfish. You're just finally choosing to live in truth. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. Demanding respect doesn't make you cold. And walking away from what breaks you, that's not betrayal. That's survival. So tell me, what part of this story did you feel most deeply? Have you ever had to become your own rescue? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home. Or tell me, where in the world are you watching this from? And if it didn't sit right with you, I'd love to hear why. What would you have done differently? If this video moved you, or made you feel a little less alone, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Thank you for spending your time here. Your story matters too. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to start writing it your way. Hi, I'm Marin. I let my sister stay in my apartment, just for a little while. But then her boyfriend moved in, he changed the locks, he made house rules. For me. I came home one day and my name wasn't on anything anymore. Not the door, not the bills, not even the truth. They threw parties, trashed my furniture, sold things that mattered to me, and then told everyone I was the problem. You ever wonder how far family will go when they assume you'll never fight back? Well, I stopped knocking. Want to know what happened next? Sunday afternoons used to mean something. A hot mug of Earl Grey, my feet tucked under a throw blanket, and a rerun of some cooking show humming in the background. Nothing urgent, nothing loud. That afternoon was no different. Or at least it wasn't supposed to be. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. I didn't answer immediately. Her calls often came packaged with a side of emotional sabotage, and right on cue, when I finally picked up, she didn't waste a second. Hi, sweetheart. How's my hardworking girl? That sugary tone, too sweet to be casual, too practiced to be sincere, set off alarm bells. I'm good, Mom. Just relaxing. What's up? There was a pause, just long enough to signal a pivot. Well, your sister's going through a rough patch. And there it was. She just needs a little help. Her lease ended unexpectedly, and she doesn't have the funds to move into a new place right away. I let her words hang in the air. The apartment. She meant the old one, the one I fought to keep after the divorce. She has nowhere to go, Marin, and you have that place just sitting there. I closed my eyes, already knowing how this conversation would end. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect my peace, my property, my boundaries. But saying no to Mom meant months of passive-aggressive jabs during family dinners. I need it rented, I said slowly. That income offsets my mortgage. I know, honey, I do. But you're doing well now. You've got your new place, your job. You've bounced back. That last part cut deeper than she realized. I bounced back because I had that apartment to fall on, I muttered. That wasn't luck. That was survival. So help your sister survive, she said simply, like I hadn't just explained that exact thing. I could already hear her retelling this to my aunts like a martyr. All I asked was a favor. Fine, I finally breathed. She can stay there, temporarily. Thank you, sweetheart. You're an angel. She hung up before I could tack on any conditions. A week passed before I saw Sorrel. She showed up at the apartment 10 minutes late with a pair of oversized sunglasses and a venti iced latte in hand, like she was on her way to a beach shoot. Hey, she chirped. Thanks again, sis. Seriously. Her hug was quick, borderline performative. I unlocked the apartment and let her in. The space looked the same. Neutral paint, basic furniture I'd left behind, a faint trace of lavender from the diffuser I'd set up last month. I've only got a few bags, she said, hauling in far more than a few. Oh, and Knox might swing by here and there. I turned to her. Knox? She shrugged. My boyfriend. He's helping me move stuff. Don't worry, he's chill. That wasn't what I asked. I cleared my throat. Look, a few ground rules, okay? No overnight guests, no parties. Don't move furniture, and if you want to do anything major, just call me first. She waved her hand. Totally fair. It wasn't reassurance. It was dismissal wrapped in a smile. 2 days later, I stopped by to drop off her insurance paperwork. She hadn't answered my texts, and I figured she was out. I still had my key, so I let myself in. The door creaked open into something off. Music played softly in the background. Indie rock, something with a lazy beat. And there, lounging on the couch like it was his personal throne, was a man I'd never seen before. He looked up, completely unfazed. "You're Marin?" I stood frozen in the doorway. "Knox," he added, pointing to himself with 2 fingers, like he expected a gold star. "Sorrel told me you were intense." I blinked. "Sorry, who are you?" I finally asked, even though I already knew. "Her boyfriend. We've kind of been staying here." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I was too stunned to respond. I turned on my heel and walked back to the hallway, dialing Sorrel. She answered on the 3rd ring, bubbly as ever. "Hey, sis. Is Knox living in my apartment?" There was a pause. "Well, he's just crashing a few nights a week. You said temporary, right? That was for you." Another pause. "It's not a big deal," she said breezily. "Don't blow this up." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just hung up. That night, I sat in my kitchen spooning cereal into my mouth while scrolling through rental listings. Not for her, for myself. I wasn't leaving my home, but I needed to remind myself what boundaries looked like. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed, "Funny how being nice makes people forget it's still your place." I stared at the blinking cursor for a few seconds, then typed another line. "Tomorrow, I'll drop by again. This time, I'll knock like a stranger. Let's see if they open the door." The sky was heavy that morning, a solid stretch of gray clouds hanging low over Portland like a warning. I pulled into the apartment parking lot with a container of pumpkin muffins and a sense of unease that hadn't left me since my last visit. There was no real reason for the muffins. I think part of me hoped that some homemade gesture would soften what I already suspected was going to be an awkward interaction. I climbed the familiar stairwell, balancing the tray in one hand and my purse in the other, and stopped in front of the door. I knocked once, firm but polite. No answer. I tried the key. It didn't turn. Confused, I pulled it out, checked the number again as if I'd somehow wandered to the wrong unit, then tried a second time. Same result. Completely jammed. I knocked again, this time louder. Footsteps shuffled inside. The door opened a crack, and there he was. Knox, barefoot, shirtless, and absolutely unbothered. "Oh, hey," he said, like I was a neighbor asking to borrow sugar. "Didn't know you were coming by. We changed the locks last week." I blinked. "You did what?" He opened the door wider, leaned casually against the frame. "Yeah, just didn't feel safe with all the foot traffic, you know?" "This is my apartment," I said, my voice low but firm. Knox tilted his head, as if I'd just spoken in Morse code. "Sure, technically, but we're living here now, so we figured it made sense." "We?" He gave me a smug smile. "Yeah, Sorrel and I talked about it. It's about safety and boundaries. Look, I actually wrote up some ground rules to keep things smooth." He disappeared inside before I could respond. I stood frozen, one hand still clutching the tray of muffins like a peace offering in a war that had just been declared. When he returned, he handed me a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. "It's just so we all feel safe and respected here," he said, as if that somehow justified what he'd done. I unfolded the paper slowly. My eyes scanned the list. Visits require 72 hours notice, no entry after 7 p.m., no discussions about bills or payments, no surprise inspections. Emotional tone must remain calm and respectful. I read it again, stunned at the audacity. Emotional tone? This man who just changed my locks without permission wanted to police my emotional tone? My fingers clenched the paper tightly, but I didn't let it tear. "Where's Sorrel?" I asked, my voice measured. "She's resting," he said, stepping back inside. "Want me to pass a message?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him until the door closed in my face. The hallway smelled like sandalwood incense and burnt toast. It used to smell like fresh paint and lavender when I lived there. I turned around, walked back down the stairs, and headed straight for my car. Once inside, I placed the muffins on the passenger seat, started the engine, and sat in silence for a moment. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse, although every cell in my body begged me to. Instead, I drove. Not home, not yet. I needed movement, a loop around the city, a distraction from the betrayal that had just sunk its claws deeper than I expected. By the time I got back to my place, it was dusk, and the air had turned colder. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you feel like winter's already moved in. I took the paper out of my coat pocket and laid it on the kitchen table under the overhead light. I highlighted each rule in red marker like I was grading an unearned term paper. I stared at the words until the letters blurred, then snapped a photo and saved it to a folder I labeled Legal Proof. That night, I didn't watch TV, I didn't call Mom, I didn't journal. I opened my laptop, created a new Word document, and titled it Occupancy Agreement, Emergency Termination Draft. I typed for an hour straight, bullet points, citations, references to Oregon tenant law. I even attached a PDF of the property deed with my name clearly printed in bold. And then, I stopped. I read the entire document from start to finish, let out a slow exhale, and dragged my mouse to the trash icon. Deleted. Not yet. Not like this. They needed to feel it, not in a legal envelope, not in court, not even in a shouted argument. They needed to feel the shift. That moment when the person they underestimated chooses silence, not submission. I poured a glass of wine, sat back in my chair, and stared out the window. I'd given them time. I'd given them shelter. I'd given them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I was going to give them consequences. The rain started just before dawn, a quiet tapping against the windows that reminded me of everything I hadn't said yet. Portland always knew how to set a mood. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the cursor blinking over my banking portal. Just routine, I told myself. Pay the mortgage, check utilities, move on. But something didn't look right. The electric bill was nearly double. I blinked and refreshed the page. Still the same. Water usage spiked, the Wi-Fi plan somehow upgraded. I hadn't touched the account. I picked up my phone and sent Sorrel a text. Hey, have you noticed the utilities? They're way higher this month. She responded 10 minutes later. Oh, yeah, Knox said the heater's been glitchy. Maybe that's it? That's it? I wasn't buying it. Knox couldn't fix a flat tire, let alone diagnose HVAC issues. And why would a broken heater cause the Wi-Fi to triple? A chill passed over me. Not from the rain or the air, but from something sharper. Suspicion. That afternoon I stepped out for groceries but ended up circling back toward the old apartment. I hadn't planned on it. I just found myself taking a left where I usually turned right. The street was quiet, a little too quiet for mid-afternoon. The blinds were drawn, the porch light on in broad daylight. It looked occupied. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I just stared up at the mailbox built into the wall near the stairs. I'd set up forwarding for all my mail when I moved, but sometimes institutions still sent things to my old address, out of habit or laziness. Later that evening, after putting away groceries and trying, and failing, to focus on a work report, I logged into my bank's customer service chat. Can you confirm where my last 2 statements were mailed? The agent typed. Yes, last 2 paper statements were sent to old apartment address. Delivered last Thursday. Delivered, but not received. I hung up and called Sorrel. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. The next morning, I drove back. This time I brought coffee, decoy hospitality. Knox opened the door again, wearing a t-shirt with a cartoon skull and plaid pajama pants. Morning, he mumbled. I gave him a tight smile. Have you seen any mail for me? Bank statements? They should have come last week. He shrugged. We tossed junk mail. Didn't see anything with your name on it. I looked past him into the living room. Packages, envelopes, and flyers were scattered across the table like confetti. Can I just take a look myself? He stepped forward, blocking the entrance. I'd rather not. Sorrel's asleep. You get it, right? Right. I turned back toward the stairs without another word. On the way down, my jaw tightened so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I didn't even glance at my car until I was sitting inside it, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd warned her. 2 months earlier, we were at Mom and Dad's for dinner. Sorrel had pulled a face when I asked her not to mess with mail sent to the old place. It's not just junk, I told her. It's not just paper. It's linked to my identity, my accounts. She'd laughed, wine glass in hand. Okay, boss lady, chill. I should have known then. The red flags weren't subtle. They were practically waving in slow motion. Back home, I opened a fresh folder on my desktop and labeled it, Violation Log, Apartment B. I started typing, unauthorized lock change, unauthorized occupant, mail interference, utility spike, account tampering. The list went on. I paused halfway through, ran my fingers through my hair, and picked up my phone again. I need access to the mailbox next time I visit, I texted. No reply. A full hour passed. Then two, nothing. She was online, her little green status dot glowing like mockery, but apparently silent. That evening I made dinner and tried to pretend the roast chicken meant something comforting, something stable, but all I could think about was the envelope I hadn't received, the bills they weren't paying, the locks I didn't own anymore. Later that night, I left a sticky note on my fridge. When you take back what's yours, do it without shaking. I folded the utility bills and tucked them into a red file folder. My fingers trembled, but I steadied them, opened my vanity drawer, and applied lipstick with the precision of a woman preparing for war. Looking at my reflection, I whispered, "Next visit, I'm not knocking." Saturday rolled in with the kind of wind that rattled the gutters and sent brittle leaves scraping along the sidewalk like they were trying to flee something. I had just poured a cup of chamomile tea when my phone rang. Caller ID, Mrs. Varela. The older woman from across the hall at the old apartment wasn't someone who called unless something was wrong. I put the mug down and answered. "I'm sorry to bother you, dear," she said, her voice thin and cautious. "But there's been a lot of noise coming from your unit, almost every night this week. Loud music, many people coming and going, very late. It's not like before." My stomach twisted. "I'm really sorry, Mrs. Varela," I said. "I'll take care of it." I stood by the window, staring out at the bare branches trembling against the gray sky. How many nights had I spent rationalizing, holding back, giving them another chance? Tonight was different. I changed out of my loungewear, threw on a jacket, and grabbed my bag. On the drive over, my grip on the steering wheel tightened with each turn. I didn't listen to music, didn't check messages. I didn't even rehearse what I would say. By the time I parked in front of the building, the sun had completely sunk. From the outside, I could already hear the bass, low, relentless, pulsing through the walls like a heartbeat, the kind of sound you feel in your chest before you hear it in your ears. The hallway smelled like beer, weed, and something burnt. I knocked on the door once. No answer. I tried the key. Still nothing. The lock they'd changed hadn't been for security. It was to keep me out. I knocked again, louder this time. A few moments later, the door cracked open. A girl I'd never seen before peeked out, chewing gum, her mascara slightly smudged. She tilted her head and smirked. "Oh, are you the landlady?" she asked, like she already knew. Before I could respond, Knox appeared behind her, red plastic cup in hand, wearing an oversized hoodie like this was a college dorm party. "Hey, Marin," he said, grinning like nothing was wrong. "Sorry, little get-together. We kept it small." I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside without waiting for permission. The air reeked of stale alcohol and cheap cologne. My antique side table, one I'd inherited from my grandmother, had beer cans stacked on it like it was a recycling station. People were slouched on the couch, on the floor, even on the windowsill. Someone had spilled something sticky near the kitchen, and the wood looked warped. I scanned the faces and didn't recognize a single one. "I want everyone out. Now!" I said, not yelling, just clear. Sorrel emerged from the back, barefoot and holding a wine glass. Her cheeks were flushed, and her expression somewhere between annoyance and amusement. "Seriously?" she said, rolling her eyes. "You could have at least sent a text." I stared at her. I shouldn't need an invitation to walk into my own apartment. Knox stepped between us, arms slightly raised. "Relax, it's just one night." I looked him dead in the eye. It's been one night every night, apparently. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I turned to the strangers. Party's over. Now. A few people stood awkwardly. One guy muttered something under his breath as he passed me, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to reclaim. Sorrel set her glass down with unnecessary force. You always have to make everything so dramatic. No, I said. I make things clear. That's different. She scoffed. God, you sound like Mom. That hit harder than she knew, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing it. As the apartment emptied, I did a final sweep. My bookshelf had been rearranged. My lamp had a crack near the base. The rug I'd chosen so carefully now had dark stains near the edges. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back at her when I walked out. Next time, I said, loud enough for them both to hear, I won't be this polite. By the time I got back to my car, the night had turned colder. The wind pushed against me like it, too, was tired of being ignored. As I unlocked the driver's side door, my phone buzzed. A message from Sorrel. You're making this a lot harder than it has to be. I stared at it. Then, with a calm I didn't feel, I unlocked my phone, opened my email, and clicked Compose. Subject: Notice of lease violation informal. I hit send on the email, leaned back in my chair, and waited for the screen to feel less like a battlefield. It didn't. The subject line glared back at me like a warning flare. Notice of lease violation informal. I wasn't playing games anymore, and I wasn't going to let anyone else rewrite the rules. By the time Saturday dinner came around, I was still fuming, but I showed up. Dad grilled as usual, humming to a Sinatra tune from his tinny Bluetooth speaker, while Mom moved in and out of the kitchen with serving bowls like it was just another family meal. I helped out, trying to keep my face neutral, sipping on club soda and counting the minutes until I could leave. Sorrel didn't come. Apparently too tired, Mom said, then followed it up with a tight smile and, You two really need to talk. I didn't answer. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. Small talk about weather, traffic, Mom's new succulents that were thriving in this moody Portland rain. The roast was slightly overcooked. The mashed potatoes were underseasoned, but that wasn't what made it hard to swallow. Dessert came, pecan pie, and while we passed plates, Mom struck. Like she'd been waiting for the exact moment my guard was lowest. Sweetie, she began, using that voice she reserves for requests she knows won't go over well. If you're not really using the apartment anymore, maybe it's time to, put Sorrel's name on it, just for simplicity. The room went silent. I set my fork down slowly. Excuse me? Mom smoothed her napkin in her lap, pretending not to notice my reaction. Well, it would give her some stability. She's been through a lot, too. You've already got your place now. You've moved on. My gaze darted to Dad. He didn't meet my eyes. He shifted in his seat, suddenly fascinated by his empty coffee mug. Moved on, I echoed. Because I bought a place with my own credit? Paid every dime without help? That's what moving on looks like? She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. You're doing so well, and Sorrel's still figuring things out. You've always been the grounded one. You could help her feel that too. I stared at her. It felt like looking at someone I didn't recognize. That apartment isn't just extra space, I said. It's how I survived. When Mark walked out, and I was drowning in legal fees and paperwork and loneliness, that apartment was the one thing I had left that he didn't take. She pressed her lips together. Yes, but that was 2 years ago, Marin. And it still matters. Dad finally spoke, voice low. Maybe. It wouldn't be the worst thing, if it helps the family. I laughed, just once, sharp and bitter. Of course, there it is, the family card. Flashbacks hit me in waves. Every time Sorrel flaked out and I covered for her. Every chore I did growing up while she got one more chance. Every pat on the back she got for mediocrity while I had to break myself for a nod. You know what this feels like? I asked, looking between them. It feels like a transaction, like every favor I've ever given just got an invisible price tag stuck on it. Mom reached across the table, palm up. We're not attacking you. You're being very defensive. I didn't take her hand. I'm being consistent, I said. For once in my life, I'm not bending. Not for guilt, not for comfort, not for someone else's convenience. I stood, placing my napkin gently on my plate. I will not give up that apartment. Not now. Not ever. It's mine. Legally, emotionally, all of it. Mom looked wounded. Dad just looked old. I didn't wait for them to speak. I walked out, coat still draped over the chair. The drizzle had started up again, cold and unrelenting, as I got into my car and closed the door behind me like a vault. The silence inside felt heavier than it should have. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at my desk. I opened the drawer and pulled out the title deed, smoothing it out like it was a sacred relic. My name. Not Sorrel's, not Mom's, not anyone else's. They want to talk names? I murmured. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer. Let's talk contracts. I didn't sleep that night. The quiet hum of my apartment, once soothing, felt like a warning siren muffled under drywall. I spent the early hours pacing. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a breath held too long. Every shadow cast by headlights on the wall looked like something about to collapse. By mid-morning, the rain had returned, not pounding but persistent, a fine, needling drizzle that Portland specialized in. I wrapped a scarf around my neck, grabbed my umbrella, and drove across town to the old apartment. My reason for going was simple. Retrieve a few sentimental things I hadn't had the heart to move. An old photo album and a cardboard box labeled Venice Honeymoon Keepsakes. I knocked once, more out of formality than hope. Knox opened the door with a flat expression, as if I were a mail carrier, not the owner of the space he was lounging in. I need to grab a couple of things, I said. He tilted his head slightly, casual. Oh, we got rid of some of that old junk. Thought it was just leftover crap. I stared at him, the words struggling to make sense. What do you mean, got rid of? He leaned against the doorframe like this was a regular Tuesday. That blue vase, sold it. Facebook Marketplace, $50, you're welcome. My hands clenched before I even realized it. That vase wasn't just decoration. It was from Venice, our last peaceful trip before the divorce turned everything sour. I kept it not for the memory of the man, but the moment, the fragile illusion of beauty during chaos. You sold it? I repeated flatly. He shrugged. It was just sitting there. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out. Back in my car, the heat blasting against my frozen fingers, I sat there in silence. Then my phone rang. Mom. Against my better judgment, I picked up. I didn't say hello, just held the phone to my ear. What is going on with you? She demanded immediately. Sorrel said you barged in and started yelling at Knox. I didn't yell, I said, but even if I had, it would have been justified. They sold something that wasn't theirs. She snorted. You always hold on to things too tightly. Maybe that's why your marriage didn't last. I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them would have landed where they needed to. Her voice cut again through the line like a knife dull from overuse. You're acting like a tyrant, Marin. Maybe try some empathy for once. I didn't hang up, but I did let the phone fall into my lap, screen still glowing, her voice now muffled and distant like static from another planet. When I got home, I walked straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing. No music, no glass of wine, no journal entry to process what I was feeling. This wasn't a moment for reflection. This was war. Clean, paper-bound, legally defined. I drafted a formal eviction notice. I copied my lawyer on the email. I attached photos. The broken lamp base, the beer stains on the rug, a screenshot of the online listing that still showed the blue vase in the recently sold section. I included screenshots of texts never replied to, the utilities doubled, the mail that vanished, and the rules they had taped on the fridge like I was a tenant in my own property. If they want to treat me like a stranger, I murmured aloud, then they'll get the version of me who doesn't knock first, the version who uses certified mail. That night, I printed the letter, folded it carefully, slipped it into a crisp envelope and sealed it with a deliberate press of my palm. On the front, in block letters, I wrote, "To Sorrel and Knox, open immediately." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. But for the first time in weeks, I felt solid. 2 days passed. I didn't hear anything after slipping the envelope under their door. No apologies, no messages, not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Sorrel. Just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like the breath someone takes before they strike. The strike came at 10:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was in a meeting at work, glancing through marketing reports, when a message popped up on my phone. Subject: HOA inquiry, urgent response requested. My stomach flipped. I stepped out into the hallway, opened the email, and stood there frozen beneath the fluorescent lights. The letter was polite, cold, official. We've received a complaint alleging repeated unannounced visits, verbal intimidation, and disruption of tenant peace. If verified, these actions would constitute a violation of HOA conduct policies. You may be required to request prior written permission to enter the property. Please submit your written response within 72 hours. I read it twice before the words stopped blurring. Knox had gone to the HOA, not just whining. He'd filed a formal complaint against me, in my own building, as if I were the trespasser, the threat. I took it, said nothing. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. Then I whispered, "They're turning my home into evidence, and me into the criminal." Back at my desk, I couldn't focus. I excused myself early and headed to my car. My hands trembled as I turned the keys, but this time it wasn't fear, it was fury. By the time I reached home, I was already pulling up Knox's social profiles. That's when I saw it. A coworker had sent it to me via Slack with the message, is this you? Reddit, Neighborhood Watch subreddit. The title read, "Landlords like this are why we can't have peace." My face was right there, frozen mid-sentence in a still frame from a video I hadn't known existed. The clip showed me banging on the apartment door. No sound, no context. Just a GIF loop with my name blurred out, but only barely. The comments were brutal. Classic Karen energy. Hope the tenants sue her. If she's this unhinged on camera, imagine what she's like off it. One user had connected my face to my LinkedIn profile. Wow, she works in marketing. Explains the fake charm. 400 comments. Shares across Facebook. A tweet that was going semi-viral. I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I screen recorded the entire thread and saved every image, every comment. Archived it all in a folder labeled defamation_evident not officially, he said. But yeah, it was always in the background. The air in the room thinned. I didn't shout. I didn't storm off. I just stood up. Tell Mom I'll pick up the last of my things from the apartment today. On the way out, I paused at the doorway, my hand on the frame. She never thought I'd need that place, did she? Dad didn't answer. He didn't have to. By mid-afternoon, I was standing outside the apartment one last time. It looked smaller now, like grief does when you finally stop feeding it. Knox was nowhere in sight. Good. One less face I had to pretend not to despise. Sorrel was packing boxes in the living room, surrounded by the echo of cheap perfume and something that smelled like burned toast. When she saw me, she didn't say hello, just handed me an envelope. Already sealed, she said. C_001. Then I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. The next morning, I sat across from her in a small office downtown, while she reviewed the footage and printed screenshots. Her demeanor was calm, practiced, but I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. "You're dealing with someone who's manipulative," she said. "He's controlling the narrative because he knows how it works. Don't fight this emotionally, fight it methodically." We began building our case, a formal cease and desist to the HOA, a detailed rebuttal with photographic evidence of the apartment's damage, screenshots showing Knox and Sorrel denying access and failing to respond, archived Reddit threads, deleted comments, metadata timestamps, everything. "I'm done letting them speak first," I said. My voice didn't shake. I got home that evening and opened my laptop. I clicked reply all to the HOA email, attached all the files. I wrote concisely and without apology my response. I explained how this tenant wasn't on a lease. I explained how my name was on the deed. I submitted formal proof of ownership, legal correspondence, and the eviction notice already in progress. Before I hit send, I added one sentence. "The only person being intimidated here is me." I clicked submit. Then I opened my messages and typed a short text to my lawyer. "Let's file. I'm ready." 3 days after we filed, I found myself pulling into my parents' driveway again. The skies were finally clear, like they'd run out of ways to punish me. The sun didn't warm me. It just lit up the mess more clearly. Mom stayed in the kitchen, rattling pans like she had something to prove. But Dad asked to talk in the den. We sat across from each other, a low hum of the heater filling the gaps in our silence. He looked tired, older than he had a week ago. "There's something you should know," he began, his eyes fixed on the floor between us. "Your mother, she always assumed that when you remarried, you'd move on, that the apartment wouldn't matter anymore." I didn't respond. I just blinked slowly. "She thought," he continued, voice tightening, "that maybe it would be better if Sorrel had it. For stability." "Are you saying this was the plan all along?" I asked, but it didn't even come out as a question. It came out flat, like a diagnosis. He finally looked at me, and I saw it. The guilt, the weariness of a man who didn't agree, but also didn't stop it. As she continued taping a box, I unfolded the note inside. "You win. Enjoy your little kingdom. Maybe if you knew how to love people, you wouldn't always be so alone." I read it twice. No sting, just confirmation. She still thought this was about winning. She still thought she was owed something because she had less. I slipped the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into my coat pocket. Then I looked at her, really looked. "You know what the difference is between us?" I said. "I had to learn how to live without applause." She didn't reply. She just taped the last box like it was the final point in a game I refused to play. By sundown, she was gone. The apartment felt hollow in a different way now, not just empty, but exhaled, like a space finally released from being misused. I walked through each room slowly, running my fingers over surfaces, opening cabinets, closing drawers. No more beer cans, no more strangers' laughter, just quiet. I paused in the bedroom. That was where I'd first curled up after signing my divorce papers, on the floor, with nothing but a throw blanket and a bag of takeout. And yet I'd felt safer then than I had in recent months. A knock on the door snapped me back. The locksmith. He didn't ask questions, just greeted me with a nod and got to work. While he replaced the lock, I stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the sun dip behind the neighboring rooftops. He handed me the new keys 20 minutes later. "All done," he said. I paid, thanked him, and walked him to the door. Once it closed, I locked it, twice, then leaned my forehead against the cool wood. "Done," I whispered. Finally. The next morning, I woke up to stillness. No unread messages, no lawyers on hold, no dread pacing the hallway outside my bedroom door. Just light slipping between the blinds and a strange sense of completion. 1 week later, I brought in a professional cleaning crew. They scrubbed the apartment from top to bottom, scented the air with lemon, and lifted the months of grime out of the corners. It was a necessary reset, one I didn't realize I craved so badly. I kept the windows open the whole day, letting in the early spring air and whatever clarity it decided to carry with it. I repainted the walls myself. Soft almond in the bedroom, crisp white in the living room. Each stroke felt like reclaiming a part of my breath. I swapped out the light fixtures, pulled up the stained rug, replaced it with one I'd picked with intention. Something fresh, something mine. By the second Saturday, I took new photos and listed the apartment online. Clean, quiet, respectful tenants only. A week later, I met the new tenant at the door. Her name was Elise, medical resident, new to Portland, barely older than Sorrel. But the look in her eyes held responsibility, something grounded. She asked thoughtful questions. She signed every page of the lease carefully, no corners skipped. As I handed her the keys, I said, "Respect the space and it'll take care of you." She smiled. "I've been looking for something like this for months, thank you." I watched her walk inside and didn't feel a sting, just a quiet kind of pride. That night I sat on my couch, wine in hand, bare feet curled under me, when my phone lit up. It was a group message. From Mom. "Mom, we know things got messy. Your dad and I hope we can sit down together soon. When you're ready." I didn't reply, but I didn't delete the thread either. I stared at her words for a long time, like they might morph into something less rehearsed. Forgiveness wasn't a prize I was ready to hand out just because someone remembered my name again. And honestly, maybe I was done trying to be the bigger person if it meant always being the one bleeding quietly. I slid the phone face down on the coffee table. 2 days later, I ran into Mrs. Varela in the elevator. "Quiet week," she said, adjusting the strap of her purse. "Glad to see the old noise is gone." I smiled. "You and me both." She leaned in, voice hushed. "I heard Sorrel moved back in with your parents." I figured. "And the boy, what's his name?" "Knox." "Yes, him. Someone said he moved to LA. Apparently that charm doesn't stretch far when the money's not someone else's." I gave a non-committal nod. I wasn't interested in Knox's downfall or Sorrel's regret. I wasn't even interested in closure. They could figure themselves out on someone else's time. What I had was a key that worked, a home that breathed again, and a silence that finally sounded like peace. That weekend, I found it. I was scrolling online, browsing vintage listings I didn't need, when it appeared. The vase. The one from Venice. The one Knox sold for $50. Now? It cost more. Of course it did. But I didn't hesitate. I clicked buy now. When it arrived, I opened the box slowly, peeled away the layers of bubble wrap like something sacred lived inside. It was the same vase. The crack near the base was still there, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. I ran my fingers over it gently and placed it on the windowsill in my kitchen, where the morning sun caught its blue curves just right. They had broken things, but I replaced them. Not because they deserved a second chance, or because I forgave the damage, but because I forgave myself for trusting they wouldn't break them in the first place. I stood back and let the light pour in. Some scars you carry. Some you frame. Some lessons in life don't come wrapped in apologies or sealed in resolutions. They come in silence, when no one shows up to explain, when closure isn't handed to you, and when the people who hurt you go on like nothing happened. But that's where you find your strength. Not in winning the argument, not in proving a point, but in rebuilding. Quietly, deliberately, for yourself. If you've ever given too much, stayed too long, or silenced your own needs just to keep the peace, then maybe this story is yours too. Maybe you've also learned that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. And that choosing yourself doesn't make you the villain, it makes you whole. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw the line with someone you loved? Or reclaim something that was yours? Your peace, your home, your voice? Let's talk in the comments. If this story resonated with you, leave a 1 in the chat or tell me where you're watching from. I'd really love to know. And hey, if you didn't like the story, tell me why. Was it too close to home or too far from your own? Either way, thank you for being here. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, sometimes messy, but always human, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive. I'll see you in the next one.